Hi, a very good afternoon to all the esteemed guests here and a warm welcome to the entire panel. My name is Anand Mantri, I'm a principal with Kearney and it's a pleasure to moderate this session on a very, very contemporary topic and in a sector of significant relevance as India goes ahead in our ambitious journey to become a world superpower. A lot has been spoken in the first session about the power of petrochemicals, the secular growth story. And despite all the challenges, I guess all of us appreciate that India would actually need a world-scale cracker every year if we were to sustain the demand that we envisage going forward. But at the same time, this industry is very uniquely positioned today to drive net zero goals as well. Moving away from carbon feedstocks, getting into fossil fuels, to getting into petrochemicals, increasing the petrochemical intensity of refineries as well as a very profitable venture for all the oil and gas players. Given this context and given a slew of net zero announcements by global as well as Indian players, let us focus on multiple areas related to sustainability, related to net zero, specifically in this industry. I'll invite Shouvik first, right? And Shouvik, given your experience, how are people thinking, how are companies thinking about net zero goals, specifically in this sector? And there are two parts to this, right? One, there is a greenfield announcement, and then there are brownfield. How do you see this coming along?
So, thank you, Anand. That's a very interesting question, as a matter of fact. Now, if you're looking at high-value chemicals globally, you're looking at about 2% of the total global emissions, right? And so that's not a lot from that perspective. Oil and gas does far more. And which is why you're very right when you look at the downstream process, petrochemical has a significant part to play when it comes to decarbonizing the whole value chain. Now, studies have shown that if you're looking at just petrochemicals by 2050, you're looking at a spend of about $750 to $800 billion, out of, say, the energy sector needs around $175 trillion. So that's not even 1% of the total investment required in order to, make petrochemicals net zero. It's a very interesting question as to what really will push this. So currently on the brownfield side, efficiency, of course, and Mr. Lonikar put it very well. You're looking at efficiency, AI, digital, etc., etc. Renewables also is going to play a very role, but if you look at the whole value chain, you're looking at about 85% of the emissions coming from heat and electricity, whereas another 15% coming from process emissions, which is more on the feedstock side of things. So the 85% what we are seeing here globally, if you look at the DuPonts of the world, the Dows of the world, you're basically looking at retrofits, particularly on the cracker side of things, electrification of crackers, that is what you're looking at. You're also looking at significant amount of efficiency gains. Certain cases you are looking at fuel switches, natural gas would say, for example, CBG, etc. But given, particularly in those areas, the value chain and the sourcing, etc., there are issues there yet. On the greenfield side of things, however, the interesting part is carbon capture is playing a significant role. As a matter of fact, most studies say that by 2050, carbon capture utilization will become the most relevant and feasible technology in order to, get petrochemicals to net zero. And you're looking at anywhere between 40 to 50% of emission savings coming just from that. And as a matter of fact, I think it was last year that Dow Chemicals in their Alberta, which is their Alberta Greenfield project, is basically setting up the whole carbon project. It's about $6 billion, something around that, just for carbon capture and green hydrogen. So that's the perspective that we're looking at. It's a dual element. You're looking at efficiency, you're looking at renewables, particularly electrification, crackers, etc. But more and more, we are going to see carbon capture playing the big role there.
Great. Thanks. And on that note, right, Varun, I've been following you and the articles that you've been writing on this sector, right? Coming to technology, as Shouvik pointed out, specifically for the greenfield announcements, what do you think, what is maturing? At what stages of maturity? What are the optionalities available for players? Right from retrofitting to other technologies available. Can you give us a perspective on that?
Good afternoon. Uh, I'm sorry I'm coming in between your lunch. So, uh, so in order to see that one of the beautiful carbon fixation technology in nature exists, the plants and trees, the chlorophyll molecule, which is beautiful compound which fixes your carbon CO2, and it fixes beautifully. Now we want to develop the technology to fix this CO2. So in part of, if we consider the petrochemical industry, which is growing and demand is huge, if you see the one cracker every year, as you say, but one cracker in the upstream industry, but you don't calculate the amount of energy required for the downstream industry, the emission from the downstream industry. So if you combine the all the upstream and downstream industry, the emission amount will be the huge. As per Indian International Energy Agency, the 18% CO2 emission will be counted from the chemical sector in 2018. So it's a 6-year back report. But now that emission is also increasing day by day. So significant quantity of the CO2 coming from the chemical and petrochemical sector, and we need to fix that. So the carbon capture, CCUS technology, utilization and transportation. The carbon capture and utilization is not a problem. The problem is this transportation and the supply chain. And the cost involved in that transportation and supply chain is a major problem. And we need to fix that cost because the consumer will pay only when he get any product in a reasonable price. And all these technologies, the processes involved in this process, chemical industry, the bioenergy, the renewables, biochemical processes, which is used for the biorefinery process, hydrogen energy. So all these technologies are matured, but there is a problem of the cost. And the cost need to be optimized first, and then only all these technologies are viable in the nature. And one most important parameter is all these technologies are available, but the players are working in silos. So we need to come together in order to synergize their technologies to meet our demand system. So the system need to be efficient, energy efficient, as well as resource efficient. And the biomass, as we see the population is growing, biomass energy will also increasing. So our focus should be shift from fossil fuel to biomass, and that technology should be matured enough. But actually the problem is that technology is not going from the pilot scale to commercial stage just because of the cost factors involved in this technology.
No, great. Thank you, Varun. And you highlighted about technology. You also touched upon the feedstock, and we will come to feedstock in a minute. But before that, just staying on the technology point, Nikhil, you also touched upon the technology side of it. Specifically on hydrogen, you said that you've done something innovative specifically on the compression side. On the ammonia, you talked about the storage and transportation side. Would you want to deep dive on this topic? What have you done, and how can this help in the net zero goals?
Yeah, thank you, Anandji. I'd like to talk specifically about the challenges in hydrogen. Basically, hydrogen is going to be the next generation fuel, which the Indian government is also promoting in a big way. We had already the government has already announced the green hydrogen mission last year, earmarked certain budget for making the industry come forward and invest in this sector. And more organizations, companies, the existing, the players who are there in the refinery, petrochemical, and the newer energy companies are also entering this particular segment. So we, being one of the, the key equipment manufacturer, are offering solutions. A lot of, discussions at the back end. Research and development is already going on about what and how we should come up and offer a solution to the industry. Especially we are talking for pure hydrogen service. But in the meantime, we have, I'll talk basically about the challenges in compression of hydrogen, basically of pure hydrogen service. I mean, we have most of the chemical engineers in this session. I beg your pardon if I make any mistake. I'm not a chemical engineer. I'm basically a mechanical engineer. But I'll try to do justice to this topic. As you know, hydrogen is a light gas, molecular weight of 1.2, 1.3. I'm talking of pure hydrogen. High Mach number, negative Joule-Thomson coefficient, due to these basically the factors, the pressure ratio, what you get basically for compression is pretty low. And due to which you have to have multiple casings, or you have to have multiple stages of compressors, be it centrifugal compressors or any other type of piston ring compressors, basically recip compressors. So taking these factors, these challenges into account, we have come up with a very novel idea of mounting these proven barrel compressors in such a way wherein you can either run these compressors in parallel, series, get a throughput which is basically required for this particular application service, and which we call it as a flex op compressor arrangement. We have been promoting this at various seminars, like what we are right now into at various global forums, and a lot of interest has been generated from the industry as well as the new energy players which are entering this particular segment. And very soon we are going to have success into that particular sector of offering a solution to this industry and for this pure hydrogen service with usage of existing the proven barrel compressors. So till the time we have a dedicated centrifugal compressors for pure hydrogen, we have this solution to offer for this industry. I hope that answers. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. Sounds very innovative. And if there's some PEVC in the house, you might be interested. One part of it is technology, right? And Shouvik, you talked about Dow, right? And I believe you were talking about the green cracker, which was very famous when it was launched. A large part of the green cracker is feedstock. In the first session, there were a lot of discussions around challenges even in the fossil-based feedstocks. So now we are moving and talking about green feedstocks. What is happening globally? Any learnings for India? India is in a good position to actually drive this with all the Satat scheme and all that.
Yes. So, okay. Now, especially nowadays, we tom the whole idea of green feedstock, etc. coming in. But like Varun has put it across very well, none of these are new technologies. Electrolysis has existed for the last 25, 30 years, right? Extracting or producing ethylene through bioethanol has existed for, I don't know, last 15, 20 years. But there is a reason why Brazil still is 50% of the bioethylene market in the world. The challenges are cost, of course, cost of the end product. And how does that match up with the cost of the end product coming from fossil fuel feedstocks? And more importantly, your value chain as far as sourcing these feedstocks in the first place is concerned. So yes, while we've progressed a lot, whether it's our E20 mandate, whether it's our Satat scheme mandate, I think we really need to put our heads through how better can we actually make it efficient. Because right now our feedstocks are competing against a lot of places. And I'll give you one very clear example, right? So waste to gasification is pretty novel and pretty innovative. So I believe it was in Rotterdam port that they set up the first, as Noble set it up, waste to gasification to chemicals. Now that was in 2018. 2021, they had to move that from waste gasification to jet fuel. And the reason was, it wasn't feasible. The end product of chemical, there was no market for that. So while you can bring in all these green feedstocks, you can talk about green hydrogen, you can talk about green methanol to, olefins, etc. Cost is a big factor. So when you bring in, and that's where it's not just a question of feedstock. Even for that example, we talk about the fact that if you start recycling thermoplastics, right? And the more recycling you do, you'll reduce the amount of virgin that you need. But look at India, we can't even decide on the numbers of recycling that we're doing, whether it's 30%, whether it's 60%, whether it's 13%, nobody knows. So you can keep talking about feedstocks and there are technologies, etc. coming in, but unless and until you bring down that cost, it's going to be very, very tough going forward. And there are multiple factors whether it's supply chain, whether it's technology. So policy and regulation will have to play a significant role. Yes, areas like site scheme, etc., are excellent to start off with, but where are we going to go and how they're going to compete for other aspects, especially on the energy and fuel side, is what we'll have to consider going forward.
Absolutely. And unfortunately, Vishal is not here on the panel. He couldn't make it. Otherwise, I would have asked him the policy question and the advocacy bit. But as you said, right, there are too many pieces in this entire puzzle. Yeah. And this can't be done alone. Right? So, Varun, I just wanted to pick your brain on, what is the role of partnership in making this possible? There is technology, there is feedstock, but those are the larger pieces. Beyond that, there are supply chain issues, logistics, just sourcing all of that from the end of the value chain, one end of the value chain to the other. There's a lot more to be done, right? What do you think? How can partnerships help?
With respect to the establishment of the partnership, company needs to come together in order to sustain their business. So in the near future, if your global temperature is rising and the policy regulator, so the government will cap your CO2 emissions, your emission targets, then what will happen? Industry has to work on the sustainable systems. And if you see all these technologies are majorly governed by the developed countries, and these technologies are not feasible with respect to the developing countries because their cost is too much high and the consumer is not going to pay. So we need to change the consumer perspective, and as well as the policy and regulation should be put in place in order to make these technologies to come together. Otherwise, companies will not come together in order to produce that system. So these are required actions that we need to be taken.
No, absolutely agree. In fact, I remember I co-authored a paper. We talked a lot about technology partnerships and MOUs and G2G conversations that need to happen to actually make this possible. Any view, Nikhil, on how are you partnering with OMCs today, and how are you helping them?
Yeah, thanks for providing this opportunity to speak on behalf of, I'll talk on behalf of overall turbo machinery equipment manufacturers, or OEMs, what we call. See, this industry is, with all regards and respect, is still in nascent stage. Again, with all regards and respect, nobody knows what's going to happen in future, even though the future really looks bright. As far as from the equipment perspective or from the solution provider perspective, it's not the conventional route what we can take actually. What used to happen, basically, the project is announced in the market, there is a feasibility study done, feed, it goes to the RFQ stage, FID, and then, it goes for an international bidding or a typical conventional bidding. This particular, the industry, I'm talking basically from the point of energy transition point of view, it requires close interaction between the user and the equipment supplier or the solution provider. What is exactly requirement, whether, getting all the pieces of puzzle, like there might be a EPC contractor, there might be the end user, and here you have this solution provider, an equipment supplier, on the OEM, whatever you call. They have to come on a common platform, discuss what are the avenues, what are the solutions. Different, the pros and cons has to be discussed, because you don't have a reference existing in the industry wherein you can say, hey, that this particular solution we have offered at this particular location. This is totally a new sector. So it all depends on the brainstorming, the close mutual interaction, and there should not be any loss of crucial, precious information. And that is what I mean by close interaction and interaction with all the involved stakeholders. So to make it a success. Thank you.
Fair enough. So just summarizing, we talked about the overall net zero goals, how are global players looking at it, is it possible in India? We talked about green technologies, we talked about green feedstocks. We also talked about what are the enablers required to make this happen, right? And thank you for all the, to all the panelists to share your views, for sharing your views on this.